Over 60? Relieve joint pain fast. 7 beans that work like ibuprofen. Have you ever woken up, made a fist, and felt your own hand fight you back? What if the ache in your knees isn't just getting older, but something your body has been quietly trying to tell you for years, and nobody ever translated it for you? I've spent decades sitting across from patients over 60, listening to the same story on repeat. They took the pills exactly as prescribed. They never missed a dose. And they still woke up some mornings with fingers that wouldn't bend right away and knees that groaned on the first few stairs. If that sounds familiar, I want you to know something clearly right at the start. You are not imagining it, and you are not doing anything wrong. There is a piece of this puzzle that almost never gets explained in a rushed 10-minute appointment. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what it is and exactly what 7 ordinary foods on your grocery list may be able to do about it. Let's talk about what's actually happening inside a joint as we move past 50. It's not just wear and tear, like a hinge slowly rusting. What's really going on is a slow-burning process called chronic inflammation, and it behaves nothing like the sharp, obvious swelling you get from twisting an ankle. This kind of inflammation is quiet. It simmers under the surface for years, chipping away at cartilage, irritating the tissue, lining your joints, and making every movement just a little more painful than it used to be. Pain medication can dull the signal your brain receives, but it doesn't put out that fire. That's the piece almost nobody explains to patients, and it's the reason so many people feel like they're managing pain instead of actually healing. Here's the part that genuinely surprised me the first time I dug into the research. Some of the plainest, cheapest food in your kitchen may reach that fire in a way a pill never will. We're talking about beans, not a supplement, not a prescription, just beans. The same food humans have relied on for thousands of years, and research keeps circling back to a handful of specific ones for a reason. Today, I'm walking you through 7 of them, counting down from number 7 to the single most studied bean of all, the one researchers keep returning to again and again. Stay with me, because bean number 1 might genuinely change what's on your grocery list this week. We're starting at number 7 with the pinto bean, the one most of you already have in your kitchen without realizing what it's quietly capable of. Here's the problem so many people over 60 deal with: stiffness that isn't just in the joint itself, but in the muscles wrapped around it, tightening things up and making the ache feel worse than it already is. Why does that happen? Often it comes down to something as basic as magnesium. As we age, our bodies become less efficient at holding on to it, and magnesium is essential for regulating muscle function around every joint in your body. When levels run low, muscles cramp and tense, and that tension makes stiff mornings feel even more brutal. Now here's where the science gets interesting. Pinto beans are rich in magnesium, but they also carry plant compounds called saponins, and laboratory research suggests these compounds may help calm inflammatory signaling in the body. Their dark seed coat is loaded with polyphenols, giving pinto beans more antioxidant activity than several common vegetables, and that matters because oxidative stress is one of the quiet drivers behind cartilage breaking down over time. A realistic habit is about half a cup, cooked 2 to 3 times a week, tossed into a soup or a simple rice bowl. The mistake I see constantly is drowning them in salty canned sauce, which cancels out the benefit with sodium that encourages water retention and swelling. Rinse canned beans well or cook dried ones at home, and you fix that instantly. If you're on blood thinners, talk with your doctor before making big changes to vitamin K-rich foods, since steady, consistent intake matters more than avoiding them altogether. I think about a grandmother in Texas who swapped her nightly bowl of chips for warm pinto beans with cumin and onion, and within weeks, she told me her morning finger stiffness felt just a little less severe. Small shift, real difference. But pinto beans are just the entry point. What's coming at number 6 goes even deeper. Number 6 is the black bean, and it's hiding a secret weapon most people walk right past in the grocery aisle. Here's a problem that quietly compounds joint pain for a lot of people. Extra weight pressing down on already vulnerable knees and hips, adding pressure with every single step. Why is that so damaging? Because cartilage isn't built to handle constant excess load, and over years, that added pressure accelerates the very breakdown you're trying to avoid. This is where black beans earn their spot. They're rich in fiber and protein, both of which support healthy weight management by helping you feel full without piling on calories, and even modest weight loss has been shown to meaningfully reduce joint stress and pain intensity. But there's more happening beneath that midnight black color. It comes from anthocyanins, the same pigment compounds found in blueberries, and research shows these compounds may help lower inflammatory markers tied to joint pain and swelling. Interestingly, studies on legumes consistently find that darker seed coats carry higher antioxidant capacity than lighter varieties, so that deep color is more than cosmetic. Black beans also supply iron and phosphorus, both tied to bone strength, and weaker bones around a joint can make instability and discomfort worse. A smart habit is around 3/4 of a cup 3 times a week in salads, tacos, or blended into soup. The common mistake is skipping the overnight soak with dried beans, which leaves behind compounds that cause bloating, masking the very benefits you're after. Soak overnight, rinse well, and that problem disappears. If you're on a diuretic, keep an eye on potassium intake and stay consistent with your doctor's guidance. I remember a retired school teacher in Ohio who swapped processed lunch meat for black beans on her weekday lunch, and a couple months later, alongside some gentle weight loss, she told me climbing the stairs to her apartment felt noticeably lighter. Now, what's coming at number 5 involves a mineral almost nobody talks about, and it might be the missing piece for anyone dealing with slow healing. At number 5, kidney beans bring something remarkably specific to the table. If you've noticed your body seems to take longer to bounce back from small strains and soreness than it used to, this is worth hearing. Connective tissue repair slows with age, and one reason is a quiet deficiency in molybdenum, a trace mineral almost nobody discusses, yet essential for processing the amino acids your body needs to rebuild tissue, including the tissue surrounding your joints. Kidney beans are an excellent source of it. They also deliver copper, and research has linked copper deficiency to weaker connective tissue and slower healing, which matters directly for joints doing daily repair work. Here's something that genuinely fascinates researchers right now. Kidney beans contain resistant starch, which feeds beneficial gut bacteria, and a growing body of evidence connects gut health to inflammation levels throughout the entire body, joints included. A healthier gut may literally help quiet the inflammatory signals reaching your knees and fingers. An ideal habit is half a cup, cooked 2 to 3 times weekly, in chili, bean salads, or simmered slowly with vegetables. One safety note that matters: raw or undercooked kidney beans contain a natural toxin called phytohemagglutinin, so always cook them at a full, rolling boil, never left on low heat alone in a slow cooker. If you're managing blood pressure with medication, stay mindful of consistent portions, since beans naturally affect potassium balance. I think of a retired mechanic in Michigan who started a weekly pot of slow-simmered kidney bean chili specifically to support tendon and joint recovery after decades of physical labor, and it became a comforting weekend ritual he genuinely looked forward to. Number 4 takes us somewhere most people never expect, straight to the strength of your bones themselves. Number 4 is the navy bean, and this one carries a connection that surprises almost everyone the first time they hear it. Here's the problem. After 60, bone density naturally begins to decline, and weakened bones surrounding a joint can make pain and instability noticeably worse, even when the joint itself isn't the main issue. Navy beans are unusually rich in calcium, magnesium, and manganese, 3 minerals that work together to support bone mineralization, exactly the kind of support your skeleton needs during this stage of life. They also provide meaningful folate, which supports healthy blood vessel function, helping oxygen and nutrients actually reach joint tissue so ongoing repair can happen efficiently. Here's something most people never realize. Navy beans contain flavonoids that may help slow the activity of enzymes responsible for breaking down cartilage, acting almost like a natural brake pedal on joint degeneration. For anyone managing both osteoporosis risk and arthritis at the same time, a combination that becomes increasingly common after 60, navy beans offer a rare 2-in-1 advantage few other foods provide. A reasonable habit is half a cup, cooked 2 to 3 times weekly, stirred into hearty soup, or mashed as a creamy side. The most common mistake is overcooking them into mush, which destroys heat-sensitive nutrients and makes the meal unappealing enough that people stop eating them consistently. Cook until just tender, and you keep both the texture and the nutrition. If you take calcium supplements, space them apart from high-fiber meals for better absorption. I think of a widow in Florida whose doctor flagged early bone thinning during a routine checkup, and she started stirring navy beans into her weekly soup rotation as a simple, food-first way to support the very structure holding her joints together. Number 3 brings a creamy, comforting bean that quietly fights fluid retention around swollen joints. Number 3 is the cannellini bean, and its buttery texture hides a surprisingly powerful punch. A lot of people over 60 deal with a kind of puffy, swollen feeling around their joints by the end of the day, and most never connected to something as simple as fluid retention. Cannellini beans are exceptionally rich in potassium, and potassium plays an underappreciated role in reducing that fluid buildup around inflamed, swollen joints. They also deliver iron and thiamine, supporting energy production in the muscles surrounding aching joints, and tired muscles tend to make pain feel more intense throughout the day. Here's a genuinely interesting detail from the research. Cannellini beans have a low glycemic index, meaning they release glucose slowly into the bloodstream, avoiding the blood sugar spikes that studies increasingly connect to elevated inflammatory activity throughout the body. Stable blood sugar may translate directly into calmer, less reactive joints over time. For anyone managing blood sugar concerns alongside arthritis, a combination becoming remarkably common, cannellini beans offer real dual benefit without complicated meal planning. A sensible habit is 3/4 of a cup, 2 to 3 times weekly, blended into soup or mashed with garlic as a side. A frequent mistake is pairing them with heavily processed, sodium-loaded broth, which quietly undermines their potassium benefit by encouraging water retention elsewhere. Choose low-sodium broth, and you preserve the real advantage. If you're on potassium-sparing diuretics, talk with your doctor about portion size. I picture a retired nurse in California who replaced her usual mashed potatoes with mashed cannellini, beans, and garlic, and noticed her ankles looked noticeably less puffy by evening after just a couple weeks of consistently swapping. Number 2 is smaller than every bean on this list, but the research behind it genuinely surprised me. Number 2 is the mung bean, and it carries one of the most interesting findings in this entire countdown. Here's a problem I hear constantly from patients. They want to eat more anti-inflammatory food, but heavier legumes leave them bloated and uncomfortable, so they quietly give up. Mung beans solve that. They're remarkably easy to digest compared to most other legumes, which matters enormously if inconsistent eating has been holding you back. But digestibility isn't even the most interesting part. Mung beans contain a unique compound called vitexin, along with other polyphenols, and early laboratory research suggests these compounds may help inhibit specific inflammatory pathways directly involved in joint tissue breakdown, a finding that genuinely excites researchers studying natural anti-inflammatory food sources. They're also rich in fiber, potassium, and folate, supporting digestion and healthy blood vessel function, so nutrients keep reaching joint tissue consistently. Here's something fun. Mung beans are among the easiest legumes to sprout right on your counter, and sprouting has been shown to increase certain antioxidant compounds even further, meaning a simple jar of water and beans could boost their benefit beyond the dry version. A reasonable habit is half a cup, cooked 2 to 3 times weekly in soup, stir fry, or sprouted fresh in a salad for crunch. The common mistake is undercooking them, leaving them tough and harder to digest, which discourages people from sticking with it. Simmer until fully soft, and the texture becomes genuinely pleasant. If you have existing kidney concerns, moderate your portions and check with your doctor about overall protein intake. I think of a retired librarian in Arizona who started sprouting mung beans on her windowsill and adding a handful to her salad every afternoon, turning a tiny kitchen project into a ritual she genuinely looks forward to. And now, at number 1, we reach the bean researchers keep coming back to year after year, and once you hear why, it will make complete sense. Number 1 is the soybean, and there's a reason it sits at the very top of nearly every list like this one. Here's the deepest problem underneath everything we've talked about so far. As we age, our bodies become less efficient at repairing tissue, and joints, which depend on constant quiet repair, are hit especially hard. Soybeans are one of the only plant foods that provide a complete protein containing all the essential amino acids your body needs for ongoing tissue repair, including the connective tissues surrounding every joint. That alone would make them worth eating, but their real standout feature is a group of compounds called isoflavones. Research on isoflavones shows real potential to help modulate inflammatory pathways linked to conditions like rheumatoid arthritis, and it's a finding that continues generating serious scientific interest. Soybeans also deliver substantial calcium, magnesium, and vitamin K, 3 nutrients that work together to support bone density, something that becomes increasingly vital for joint stability after 60. Here's a genuinely striking observation from population research. Communities with traditionally high soy consumption have shown lower reported rates of certain inflammatory conditions, and that pattern has pushed researchers to study soy's role in joint and bone health more closely than almost any other legume. Soybeans additionally support healthy muscle mass, and adequate protein becomes increasingly critical after 60, since muscle loss leaves joints unsupported and more vulnerable to strain. An ideal habit is around half a cup cooked, or a cup of edamame, 2 to 3 times weekly, as a snack, in a stir-fry, or blended into soup. The common mistake is relying on heavily processed soy products, which often strip away the fiber and isoflavones that make whole soybeans so valuable. Choose whole or minimally processed soy, and you keep the full benefit intact. If you take thyroid medication, space soy intake several hours apart from your dose, and if you're on blood thinners, keep your intake consistent rather than suddenly increasing it. I think of a retired veteran in North Carolina who added a daily handful of edamame to his afternoon routine while working with his doctor to manage rheumatoid arthritis, and he told me it became one of the easiest, most satisfying habits he'd added in years. Now let's talk about actually putting this into practice, because knowing about 7 beans doesn't help you if you never actually cook them. The best way to eat most of these beans is cooked simply without drowning them in heavy sauces, cheese, or excess salt, which cancels out much of what makes them valuable in the first place. A good combination is pairing beans with colorful vegetables and a bit of healthy fat, like olive oil, since that helps your body absorb certain nutrients more efficiently. The biggest mistakes I see, over and over, are relying entirely on canned beans without rinsing them, which loads your meal with unnecessary sodium, and skipping dried beans altogether because soaking feels inconvenient, even though it takes only a few extra minutes of hands-off time. If you're choosing dried beans, look for ones without cracks or discoloration and store them in a cool, dry place. If you're buying canned, choose low-sodium versions and always rinse thoroughly before cooking. A small number of people should be cautious here. If you have a diagnosed digestive condition that flares with high-fiber foods, introduce beans slowly and in small amounts rather than all at once. And if you're on any medication affecting potassium, blood thinning, or thyroid function, it's worth a quick conversation with your doctor before making major changes. Not because beans are dangerous, but because consistency matters more than sudden shifts when medication is involved. When it comes to exactly how much and how often, here's the pattern that shows up again and again across the research on these 7 beans. A serving of roughly half a cup to 3/4 of a cup, cooked, eaten 2 to 3 times a week, appears repeatedly as the range associated with meaningful benefit without overwhelming your digestion or your routine. Rotating between 2 or 3 different beans throughout the week, rather than eating the same one every single day, seems to offer broader nutritional coverage, since each bean brings something slightly different to the table. Timing matters less than consistency. A bowl at lunch works just as well as one at dinner, as long as you're actually making it a regular habit rather than an occasional afterthought. If you're new to beans, start with a smaller portion, a 1/4 cup, and build up gradually over a couple of weeks to give your digestion time to adjust comfortably. So there you have it. 7 beans, each one quietly supporting your joints, your bones, your muscles, and ultimately your independence in ways most people never realize until someone finally sits down and explains it clearly. I want to be honest with you, the way I would be with any patient sitting across from me. This isn't a miracle cure, and no single food is going to undo years of joint wear overnight. But it is a simple, low-risk, evidence-backed habit, and sometimes the most powerful changes in our health come from something as ordinary as a bowl of beans tonight. If one of these 7 surprised you, I'd genuinely love to know which one, so leave a comment and tell me which bean you already eat or which one you're planning to try this week, because I read every single comment on these videos. If someone in your life is dealing with stiff mornings or aching knees, or quietly worried about losing their independence, send this video their way today. It might be exactly what they need to hear this week. And if you want more honest research-backed guidance like this, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss what we cover next. Your mobility and your independence are worth protecting every single day, and sometimes that protection starts with something as simple as adding 1 more bean to your next meal. Take care of those joints, keep moving, and I'll see you in the next one. If you found this video helpful, please hit the like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the subscribe button so you don't miss the next videos. I love hearing your thoughts, so please subscribe and let me know what you think. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.